Tanya. I'm an OpenSciEd teacher and facilitator. Today we're going to talk about Lesson 6 of the Metabolic Reactions Unit. In this lesson, your students are going to use what they had just figured out in Lesson 5 and apply it to some new information in Lesson 6. Let's take a minute and remember how we got here. In Lesson 5, your students did an investigation and confirmed that digestion starts in the mouth, and that amylase is an enzyme that aids in the digestion and specifically breaks down complex carbohydrates like starch into glucose. This confirmed for your students that a chemical reaction is happening when we chew our food and it mixes with our saliva. This left us wondering if chemical reactions are happening in other parts of the digestive system as well. Let's take a little closer look at this lesson in particular. This lesson is a one-day lesson and it's an investigation. There's about 15 minutes of materials prep in advance, but there's no hands-on investigation and there's no devices required. Also, there's no additional videos that you need to preview in advance. Let's take a peek at the lesson at a glance overview. For this one-day lesson, there are two major sense-making moments. The first chunk happens in part 1, where the students add to their progress trackers what they had learned in Lesson 5 about how starch breaks down by a chemical reaction into glucose in the mouth. This then leads us to the second sense-making chunk, where students use data for the rest of the digestive system and identify where food molecules are increasing, decreasing, staying the same, or just looking for other patterns. They then look at the structures of these food molecules and discuss why they think some of the molecules are increasing while others are decreasing, and the patterns that they see as this is happening. Here's what you and your students end up figuring out. This leads us to determine that not only do complex carbohydrates break down into glucose, but other food molecules do the same as well. Different parts of the digestive system are responsible for breaking down and absorbing these molecules, and therefore different organs actually have different functions. Let's dig into some of these key sense-making moments for your kids. The first is part 1, which is where students are actually given the opportunity to process what they had learned in Lesson 5 and add their findings to their progress tracker. This moment allows students to really think about what they've learned and help them navigate to what they're doing next. The second key moment is in part 2, where students analyze the data for the entire digestive system now, not just the cracker to the mouth, and start to make connections that some of the food molecules are changing, some are not, and really dig into those patterns. The final highlighted key moment is toward the end of the lesson during part 4. During this key moment, your students will be able to discuss many key ideas. Some of these ideas are that almost all of the food molecules change in the stomach and the beginning of the small intestine. This must mean the function of the stomach and the small intestine is to help break down food. In the middle of the small intestine, all of the substances in the food start decreasing except for fiber and fatty acids. They also notice that some new substances that weren't there before start appearing in the stomach, such as amino acids and fatty acids. They also notice nothing changes in the esophagus. This must mean the function of the esophagus is not related to breaking down any food. They determined that most small food molecules are decreasing in the small intestine and parts of the large intestine. This must mean that the small intestine and the large intestine are involved in absorption, and that each organ is a subsystem of the digestive system with a particular function. So where do your kids go from here? We now start to decide that we want to slow down a little bit and put all of these pieces together that we have learned over the last few lessons. We were just talking about a healthy person's digestive system, and we now want to start comparing our findings to McKenna and try to explain what we think might be happening to her. Let's take a minute and look at some tips and tricks to help make this lesson successful for yourself and your students. The first tip that I have for you is the data table that your students will be working with while analyzing their data can become a bit complicated at times. So chunk this as necessary for your students to make it so that they can understand and identify the patterns that they're seeing in the data. Next, we're going to earn 2 words in this lesson. We earn the word digestion and organ. Another word that is reinforced, though, is chemical reactions, which we also reinforced in the last lesson as well. In terms of poster management, you will be referring back to your word wall again, and your students will be creating that handout of that data table, but there's no large posters that you'll be creating during this lesson. Thanks for taking the time to learn about Lesson 6 of the McKenna unit. In Lesson 7, we're really going to start to apply what we've learned so far to McKenna and try to figure out what's going on.